The moment Karen slammed a clipboard against my fence and told me my BBQs were about to be banned, I knew two things for certain. This wasn't really about smoke, and this wasn't going to end quietly. She stood there in spotless white sneakers, sunglasses perched like a crown, reading HOA rules as if they were sacred law. According to her, the smell of grilled meat was disruptive, offensive, and damaging the community atmosphere. According to me, she'd just picked the wrong neighbor to bully. I'd lived in this HOA for years without a single issue. My weekends were simple. Friends came over. The grill fired up. Burgers sizzled, ribs smoked low and slow, and laughter drifted through the street. Neighbors waved when they passed. Kids asked what was cooking. It was normal, comfortable, human. But Karen hated normal if she couldn't control it. The official email arrived that same night. Cold language. HOA letterhead. A warning that my repeated outdoor cooking events were under review and could lead to fines or restrictions. No rule quoted. No violation listed. Just authority flexed like a threat. Karen had complained, and the HOA reacted without thinking. Instead of replying, I opened the HOA bylaws. Page by page, line by line, I read every rule Karen thought she owned. And there it was, buried deep in the documents. Outdoor grilling was fully allowed on private property. No limits. No permits. No mention of smells. Completely legal. That's when the frustration turned into something else. Inspiration. Karen wanted my grill gone. She wanted silence, control, power. So I stopped thinking about defending my BBQs and started thinking about multiplying them. If one grill bothered her, what would she do when the entire neighborhood showed up? I sketched out an idea so public, so friendly, so community-focused that banning it would make the HOA look ridiculous. Flyers went up. Messages spread. Public grill night. Everyone welcome. No rules broken. No laws crossed. Just neighbors, food, and fire. Karen had tried to shut me down. Instead, she lit the fuse. By Monday morning, Karen had already escalated things, and I could tell because the tone of the HOA email shifted from passive to panicked, like someone realizing their bluff might actually be called. The message warned me about unauthorized community events and reminded me that gatherings could not interfere with shared enjoyment. Still no rule cited. Still no violation named. Just pressure. That's when I knew my idea was working before it even happened. I replied calmly, attaching the same bylaw section again, highlighting the part that allowed grilling on private property and social gatherings without permits. Then I added one sentence that changed everything. This is not an HOA event. It is a neighbor-hosted gathering on my property. That distinction mattered, and they knew it. The HOA went quiet. Meanwhile, the neighborhood did the opposite. People started stopping me on my walks. One neighbor asked if the flyer was real. Another wanted to know what to bring. Someone else laughed and said, "Finally, something fun around here." Within 2 days, my phone buzzed non-stop. Burgers, hot dogs, ribs, veggie skewers, folding chairs, kids asking if they could help. What started as quiet resistance was turning into a full-blown community moment. Karen noticed too. She stood at the edge of her driveway whenever someone walked past my house, arms crossed, watching the conversations form. One afternoon she confronted me again, claiming I was causing division and inviting chaos. I smiled and told her everyone was welcome, including her. That made her angrier than anything else. The night before the grill event, an HOA board member stopped by. Not officially, just checking in. He asked how many people I expected. I told him honestly, no idea. He sighed, glanced at my grill, and said, "As long as it stays peaceful." That was it. No threats. No warnings. Karen had lost control of the narrative. By the time Saturday arrived, the smell of charcoal wasn't just mine anymore. It belonged to the street, to the laughter, to the sound of neighbors finally acting like neighbors. And Karen? She stayed inside, watching from behind her blinds as the community she tried to silence found its voice. By the time the sun dipped low and the grill started firing up, my driveway looked nothing like it had that morning, and everything like something the HOA never planned for. Smoke curled into the air from half a dozen grills. Someone brought a portable speaker playing old-school hits. Folding tables lined the sidewalk, covered in food, drinks, and paper plates. Kids chased each other between lawns. Neighbors who had barely nodded for years were suddenly laughing like old friends. I kept expecting someone from the HOA to shut it down. A board member. Security. Anyone. But no one came. Because nothing illegal was happening. This wasn't a protest. It wasn't loud. It wasn't disruptive. It was exactly what they claimed to protect but never allowed to exist. People told stories as they ate. One neighbor admitted Karen once reported him for leaving his trash bin out too long. Another said she complained about wind chimes. Someone else joked that she probably hated oxygen because it wasn't regulated. The laughter wasn't mean-spirited. It was relief. For the first time, people felt free to talk openly. Then Karen appeared. She didn't storm in. She hovered at the edge of her driveway, arms crossed, phone in hand, recording. Her expression bounced between outrage and disbelief. She tried calling someone, probably the HOA, but no one came. She walked closer and announced that this gathering was unauthorized and in violation of community standards. Someone offered her a burger. She recoiled like it was an insult. That's when something unexpected happened. A neighbor stepped forward and politely explained that nothing here broke any rule. Another neighbor backed him up. Then another. Calm voices. Clear facts. Karen looked stunned. She was used to complaining alone, not being answered by a crowd. She accused me directly, claiming I'd manipulated everyone. I replied simply, I invited my neighbors. The group murmured in agreement. She had no authority here. No power. Just noise. Eventually, she retreated back inside, blinds snapping shut. The grills kept going. The laughter grew louder. Someone suggested making it a monthly thing. Someone else volunteered to host next time. What started as a reaction had become a tradition. That night didn't just protect my BBQs. It rewrote the neighborhood dynamic. People exchanged numbers. Kids made friends. Plans formed. And somewhere behind those blinds, Karen realized she'd done the one thing she feared most. She brought people together. On Monday morning, the fallout began. The HOA sent a neighborhood-wide email praising community engagement, while quietly announcing new guidelines for outdoor gatherings. They framed it as clarification, but everyone knew it was damage control. The rules didn't ban grilling, but they tried to limit frequency, timing, and visibility. It was the HOA's way of saving face without admitting Karen had overreached. Karen was furious. She marched door to door claiming, I had embarrassed the neighborhood and forced the HOA's hand. Instead of sympathy, she got silence. People had tasted what real community felt like. They weren't eager to give it up. The HOA scheduled a meeting to discuss future concerns, and for the first time, the room was full. Neighbors spoke calmly, confidently, and with receipts. They quoted bylaws, shared photos, and described how grill night brought people together. Karen tried to interrupt, but the board shut her down. They ruled that my BBQs were allowed and that public grill night violated no rules. The room applauded. Karen walked out early. By the end of the week, the HOA announced something unexpected. They were forming a volunteer social committee, and they asked me to be part of it. The same grill Karen tried to ban had changed everything. But the story wasn't over yet. Karen wasn't done pushing, and her final move would test the entire neighborhood. She wanted revenge, not resolution, and she was willing to risk everything to get it. The calm after grill night was only temporary. Something bigger was coming. And when it arrived, the HOA would be forced to choose sides. That choice would change the neighborhood forever. People sensed the tension even if they couldn't name it yet. Smiles returned, but caution lingered underneath every conversation. Everyone knew Karen was planning something. And this time, she aimed higher than complaints. She wanted a rule that would end it all. What she didn't expect was how prepared we had become. The neighborhood was watching, united, and ready. Karen had started a fire she could no longer control. And the next chapter would decide who truly held power. Everything was about to come to a head. The grills were quiet, but the conflict was not. One final push remained. And Karen was already making calls. The neighborhood braced itself. No one knew how far she would go, but everyone knew they would face it together. What happened next surprised even the HOA. It started with a petition and ended with a confrontation. And it all traced back to one grill. The biggest showdown was still ahead. Tension hung heavy over every driveway, lawn, and conversation that followed that night ahead. Karen's final move arrived disguised as progress. The HOA announced a proposed amendment to the bylaws, one that would modernize community standards by restricting all outdoor cooking visible from a street. It sounded neutral, reasonable, but everyone knew who it targeted. The rule would quietly kill grill night, backyard BBQs, and any future gatherings without ever mentioning my name. Karen had finally convinced the board to try brute force, but this time, the neighborhood didn't stay quiet. Within hours, a petition circulated. Not angry, not dramatic, just clear. It explained how grilling had always been allowed, how the new rule contradicted years of precedent, and how community events had improved neighbor relationships. Dozens of signatures appeared overnight. Then dozens more. Families who had never attended HOA meetings suddenly cared deeply. Karen had underestimated what happens when people feel ownership instead of fear. The meeting to vote on the amendment was packed. Standing room only. Karen sat front row, confident, already rehearsing her victory speech. The board opened the floor for comments, probably expecting a few mild objections. Instead, neighbor after neighbor spoke calmly about inclusion, fairness, and how rules should protect people, not silence them. Parents talked about their kids making friends. Elderly residents talked about finally feeling connected. Someone even mentioned how property values benefited when communities felt alive. Then I spoke. Briefly. I didn't attack Karen. I didn't accuse the HOA. I simply asked one question. If something brings people together and breaks no existing rule, why are we trying to ban it? The room went quiet. The board took a recess. When they returned, the decision was unanimous. The amendment was rejected. Not postponed. Not revised. Rejected completely. The chair even added that future rule changes would require community input before drafting. Applause filled the room. Karen stood up, furious, and walked out without a word. Grill night didn't just survive. It became official. Not as an HOA event, but as a neighbor tradition. Rotating hosts. Shared responsibility. Shared joy. Karen still lives 3 houses down. She keeps her blinds closed. She doesn't complain anymore. The funny thing is, none of this was about BBQs. It was about power. And Karen lost hers the moment people stopped being isolated. All she wanted was control. All we wanted was connection. And connection won. Now every time the grill fires up and smoke drifts through the street, it doesn't signal conflict. It signals community. One complaint turned into a tradition. One Karen turned into a lesson. And one grill changed an entire neighborhood forever. Like, subscribe, and follow for more HOA Karen stories that backfire hard.